9 people cut their way out of a tent from the inside. They did this in darkness, in wind, in temperatures reaching -40 degrees. They left behind boots, coats, and any reasonable chance of survival. Whatever made them do it has never been determined. The tent fabric itself became the only witness, its knife cuts preserving the geometry of a decision that no one survived to explain. In late January 1959, a group of experienced ski hikers from the Ural Polytechnical Institute set out on a trek rated at the highest difficulty level recognized at that time in the Soviet Union. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov, 23 years old, an engineering student with documented backcountry experience. The group numbered 10 initially. 1 member turned back early due to illness, leaving 9 to continue toward their objective in the northern Ural Mountains. The route took them through remote, sparsely populated terrain. They were prepared. They had proper equipment. They had completed difficult expeditions before. What should have happened is simple. They would summit, return to civilization, and file their trip report. The region they crossed was harsh but not unprecedented for trained hikers operating in winter conditions. Everything about this expedition was, on paper, manageable. Nothing in the group's preparation or experience predicted catastrophe. On the night of February 1st or 2nd, 1959, the group had established camp on the eastern slopes of Kholat Syakhl, a mountain in the northern Urals. They pitched their tent on an exposed slope. At some point during the night, something caused them to abandon the tent with extreme urgency. The fabric was cut open from within using knives. This is a documented physical finding from the subsequent investigation, not an interpretation. The cuts were made from inside. They fled into heavy snowfall and strong winds wearing inadequate clothing for the conditions. Some were partially dressed. Some were reportedly missing footwear entirely. The temperature that night dropped as low as -40 degrees Celsius. None of the 9 survived. Their bodies were found at varying distances from the tent over the following weeks and months of search operations. The circumstances of their deaths varied considerably. Some showed signs consistent with hypothermia. Others exhibited injuries that investigators found difficult to explain through exposure alone. The recovery effort itself stretched across months, with the last bodies not located until May. The critical sequence remains this. A group of trained, experienced hikers, in the middle of the night, chose to cut open their shelter and run into lethal cold rather than remain inside. Whatever threat they perceived was immediate enough to override every survival instinct they had developed across years of backcountry travel. They did not stop to dress. They did not grab supplies. They did not use the tent entrance. They ran. The Soviet investigation concluded in May 1959 that the group had died from what was described as an unknown compelling force. This language is notable. It acknowledges causation without identifying it. The case was then closed. That phrase would outlive the Soviet Union itself. Consider the tent cuts. They were not random slashes made in panic by a group fighting each other. The cuts were deliberate enough to create exit points, yet urgent enough that no one paused to use the tent's actual entrance. This single detail eliminates several categories of explanation, while confirming others remain viable. It tells us the threat was perceived as immediate, interior, or directly adjacent, and affecting all 9 people simultaneously. A personal conflict or individual medical emergency does not produce this pattern. Something convinced the entire group at once that escape was more important than shelter. Over the decades since 1949, the investigation has never reached consensus. Multiple explanations have been proposed, each addressing some evidence while struggling with other documented details. An avalanche hypothesis suggests that a slab avalanche, or the imminent threat of one, forced the group from their tent. This accounts for the urgency of departure and explains certain injuries found on some of the hikers, particularly the blunt force trauma consistent with heavy compression. However, investigators at the scene in 1959 reportedly found no clear avalanche debris at the campsite, and the slope angle has been debated as potentially insufficient for slab release. The absence of burial evidence complicates this theory, though delayed or partial slab events might leave less visible traces. A katabatic wind event represents another documented possibility. Sudden, violent downslope winds could create conditions terrifying enough to drive hikers from shelter, and the exposed location on the mountain's eastern slope would be vulnerable to such phenomena. This would explain the departure, but does not easily account for the specific injuries documented on certain victims. Wind alone does not break bones in the patterns that were observed. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened a review of the case, reportedly focusing on three natural explanations: avalanche, snow slab, and hurricane-force winds. The reopening itself acknowledged that the original 1959 conclusion of an unknown compelling force remained unsatisfying after 60 years. A 2021 documentary directed by Liam Leguieu examined the incident under the title taken directly from that Soviet-era phrase, an unknown compelling force. What remains factually unresolved is not merely what killed them. Hypothermia killed most of them. The actual question is narrower and more disturbing. What specific immediate threat presented itself inside or directly adjacent to that tent, with enough force to make 9 rational, trained people choose certain death by exposure over remaining in shelter? No proposed answer satisfies all the physical evidence simultaneously. The Dyatlov Pass incident persists because it resists the comfort of a single explanation. Every proposed cause fits certain evidence and contradicts other evidence. The case has generated theories ranging from the plausible to the absurd, but the documented physical facts remain unchanged since 1959. A tent cut from within, 9 dead in inadequate clothing, injuries that vary from explainable to deeply anomalous. A Soviet conclusion that names a force without identifying it. In 1993, 34 years later, 6 hikers died under uncertain circumstances in the Khamar-Daban mountain range. That event earned the name Buryatia's Dyatlov Pass. The comparison itself reveals something. When a place produces deaths that resist explanation, we do not file them away. We name them after the first place that taught us this particular silence. The Ural Mountains do not remember what happened on the night of February 1st. The tent fabric, with its knife cuts made from inside, remains the clearest testimony anyone will ever recover. 9 people decided together, in darkness, that the cold was safer than staying. They were wrong about the cold. The question that survives 67 years later is whether they were wrong about the threat. The unsolved vault. Every case leaves something behind.